Hey, I just did episode 9 with John Martinez. In this episode, he talks about how he's doing $150,000 in revenue a month. I didn't say $150,000 a year. I said $150,000 a month. We talk about some gold nuggets that he's using to see that type of success. Now, what is a gold nugget? A gold nugget is a tangible piece of information that you can take home and implement right now. I don't want to just inspire y'all. I want y'all to go home and have some gold nuggets to implement. Anyways, tune in, take 2 or 3 gold nuggets and go implement. Thank you. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm here with John Martinez and Austin Wilder, my co-host. What's up, Austin?
How's it going, Justin? John, we really appreciate you coming on the podcast today, man. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. The pleasure's all mine.
Yeah. So John, man, I really appreciate it. I know you stay busy. We were chatting a little bit before I hit the record button on this podcast, and you sound like you're achieving some pretty high level stuff. Would you give us a quick summary of some key points? Like what type of success are you seeing now, so that when we drop these gold nuggets, the listeners know that these are valuable gold nuggets that you're implementing and they actually work?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a business owner. What my business looks like today. It's not the biggest business in the world by any means. And I have no vision of having a massive business, but it brings in about 100 to 150,000 a month in revenue. Most of that's income. We spend very little on marketing, and I work 1 to 2 hours a week to run it. And really most of my time now is focused on family, health, doing stuff I like doing, diving into really nerdy stuff. And that's really it. So there's been this progression along the way of going from corporate America to being a grinding business owner to kind of finally living the life that I'm happy with.
Yeah, that's awesome. So kind of, let's see, you said you began this journey about 6 or 7 years ago, correct? Mm-hmm. So kind of on a timeline of 10 years ago, did you see yourself like 10 years ago? Did you know you were going to be here?
Absolutely not. It was kind of it was a bunch of little things that led up to it. And then there's a straw that broke the camel's back. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting in my living room and my wife was in the kitchen. It was Christmas. I think it was Christmas Eve or the night before Christmas Eve. And I had a few days off from my job. And I remember sitting there on this big sectional we had, and I had my computer out for some reason. I think I was working, and I was just thinking to myself, like, is this the rest of my life? Like, this is it for the next 30, 40 years. This is it. And I got really, really depressed. And I looked up and I told my wife, I said, honey, I'm starting a sales training business. And she's always been so supportive. She just didn't even bat an eye. She just goes, all right, cool, go for it. So right then I pulled up GoDaddy. We're in the Midwest, so I found a domain name, midwestrev.com, bought it for like $9, built the world's ugliest website. And that was the birth of the business right there.
I love it. That's awesome. Kind of sounds like me. Tried to do a little wholesaling company about a year ago, and I was like, I'm gonna do everything at once, and ended up not doing anything good at all because I just had my wheel spinning. But so I want to backtrack a little. You said you started this journey about 6 or 7 years ago, and 10 years ago you didn't know that you would be to this point. So along this journey, what is a gold nugget that someone can go home and implement? Like, where was that turning point that it was kind of like this aha? Like, for example, for me, I realized my passion is like knowing my why. My gold nugget is like, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. So like every morning I write it down. Do you have anything like that kind of helped you start catching fire and kind of snowballing that you started implementing to help you start seeing some success?
Yeah. Man, I had a very traditional career where I worked my way up through corporate America, bigger companies, bigger roles, leading, larger and more sophisticated sales teams. And I was never really happy. So that was kind of always in the back of my mind. And I remember I was watching some Tony Robbins videos, and I know, people have different opinions on them, but I remember I was watching this video, and he was talking about, listen, if you're upset or you're unhappy or you're depressed or sad or whatever, that's yourself telling you something is wrong. Find out what caused this and attack that head on. And so I remember watching that and I was thinking to myself, why am I not happy? You know, I've got the career that I'm supposed to have. I've climbed the ladder. I'm making, you know, great money. I've got a beautiful, healthy family. And I was like, why am I not happy? And what I realized was, it was kind of like I was talking about, you know, that Christmas Eve or Eve a second ago. There was no more progress. You know, I just felt like every day, every week was the exact same. And maybe from the outside, it looked like I was successful, but I wasn't progressing. I knew I was capable of more. And while I should have been happy because the rest of the world thought I was successful, I was kind of miserable. So that was really, you know, maybe not the turning point, but that video stuck with me for a long, long time.
Yeah. And so what did you, so like if somebody was listening to this podcast right now, like that video kind of opened your eyes. Like,
Yeah.
did you do anything specifically different? Like, did you start maybe scheduling your day differently? Were you reviewing your goals, or were you setting goals set differently? Like, was there anything specific that you did differently once you saw that video?
Yeah, I started writing down everything I liked and I didn't like about my day, about myself, and just kind of started making a list to find out why am I not happy. So that was the first thing. And, you know, and it started to come to, well, you know, I don't have any friends anymore. Why? Because I work all the time. And, you know, I'm not in the gym as much as I used to be. And I love being in the gym and I love going canoeing and floating down a river for 2 or 3 days. And I'm not doing that anymore. Why? And it was, well, my career. And then I, you know, wrote, you know, I'm not being as good of a father as I want to be. I'm not being the husband I want to be. Why? I'm stressed out for work. And so I started just making a list of everything I don't, that makes me unhappy. So I could start to determine, what do I need to change? Because I knew I needed to change something, but you can't just, you know, up and change everything in your life. You have to figure out, what is it that I need to change? And for me, it was the career.
Yeah. So that's I like that. The gold nugget is writing down what you like versus not liking. That's awesome. I think Austin, as we've been doing this podcast, he actually started writing stuff down because every single person on this podcast has mentioned writing it down. There's power in writing it down.
Yeah.
Well, what are your thoughts on the power behind actually writing it down?
100% agree with you. I think everything has to be written down just the act of writing something kind of burns it into your mind, and then you can always go back to it later. So if I were to open up my email right now, there's going to probably be 2, maybe 3 emails from random people. And there's probably going to be about 20 to 25 emails from me to me. And the reason why that is because I write everything down. If I feel like I have a good idea, I email it to myself. If I, you know, anything just pops into my head that I want to remember, I email myself. And that's what I do throughout every single day. When I wake up in the morning, I've got my email full of emails from me. And I start going through them one by one. And then some, you know, I look at some and I go, not such a good idea, delete. And I go through them and I end up with 1 or 2 or 3 really good ideas that I start working on. And it's not just ideas. It's the same thing as I told you a moment ago, writing down what I like and don't like, what stresses me out, or what I know I need to change in my life. I remember I was in the gym yesterday morning. I've got a gym kind of in a detached garage on my house. And I was feeling really stressed as I was working out. And I started to think, why is this? And it was the way my day was scheduled and the kind of stuff I had scheduled in it. So I started emailing myself, you know, no more of this, cut this out of your schedule, cut this out of your life. So I write everything down, have for years and years and years. And I think there's massive power in it.
Yeah. You know, John, something I like about your example that other people, I guess didn't have. Like, obviously there is extreme power in writing your you know, your goals, your aspirations, and, you know, things you want to change on paper. But something I like about yours is that, you know, like, for example, I don't always have a notepad, or, you know, I'm on the go a lot too, you know, but I've always got my phone.
Yeah,
and I'm always connected to my email in some form or fashion. So I think that's really cool that you pretty much just are having you know, correspondence with yourself to let you know, hey, don't do this, do this, do this. I have this great idea, and you go back and evaluate it later. I think that's really cool because that not only allows you to basically, you're almost communicating with yourself, but you also can evaluate it with a clear mind at another time. And I think that way you don't slip up and miss something that can, really help you, a little down the road. That's really cool.
Yeah. I'm a big action taker, but I've realized I need some breather time. So that's why I take that day, is because sometimes I jump on stuff too quickly. Sometimes I don't put enough weight behind other things. So I really think if you feel strongly about something, just kind of marinating on it for 24 hours, even if you are a massive action taker, and I'm a big believer in action, but I need that day buffer time to kind of get out of whatever emotion I'm in and look at it with some clear eyes later.
Yeah. So you mentioned being a big action taker. That's something that I take personally, because I ran into the normal, the person that's learning everything. So I got analysis paralysis, where I read all these books and then I wasn't making any decision. And dude, it hit me one day. I met a guy that was 34 years old about 2 years ago, and he's actually my mentor now. Like I eat lunch with him once a week, constantly pouring into me. But it opened my eyes. When I met him, he had like 100 doors. He was flipping 20 a year. And I started telling him all the books I was reading, and he didn't have a clue what I was talking about. And so in my mind, I was like, I don't understand. I read all these books and he's succeeding way more than me. And so it kind of opened my eyes that you have that person that's taking action, and then you have that person who's in analysis paralysis. Let's capitalize on this conversation. Like, can you tell me the fine line of like how much should I learn versus when do I just finally take action?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've got another, I'm a big fan of podcasts and YouTube videos and, Audible and stuff like that. So I've got a lot of stuff that's just stuck with me my entire life. That's been really important that I have no idea where it came from. And one of those things was I was reading a book or listening to a book at some point, and there's some anecdote, some story about a general. And, I'm just gonna kind of go with what I remember. Maybe he's in the Pentagon, something like that. Someone asks, 4 or 5 star general. Someone asks him, you make these massive decisions all the time that can impact thousands or hundreds of thousands of lives. How do you know when you get to the point when you're confident enough to make that decision? And his answer was somewhere along the lines of, "You're never sure. You're never at 100%." He goes, "For me, it was either 70 or 80%. He goes, "If I'm 70 or 80% okay with it, or I know 70 or 80% of the information, or, I'm that far along," he goes, "that's when I go take action right now. Don't ever wait to get to 90 or 100%. He goes, 70 to 80 is my number. And when I'm there, I go." So that was the first thing that stuck with me. Today, you mentioned, real estate. I'm in a lot of the kind of high level real estate masterminds throughout the country. And I remember when I first joined the first one I was in, it was Collective Genius, which is a great group. And I was in and I was looking around at all these amazing people. There are like 70 or 80 or 90 or 100 just amazing people with these crazy stories doing big things. And, you always hear success leaves clues. And I was kind of sizing everyone up and going, what do they all have in common? And it was such a diverse group of people. I remember sitting in that room and I couldn't figure it out. It was people from all walks of life. Some were smart, some average intelligence, some probably below. Some people started with, some resources, others started with nothing. And after a few days with that group, I realized the only thing they had in common is they were all action takers. They had an idea, they did it, they went for it and failed, and they were okay with that failure. And you get 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 failures for every success, but it was just that they took action and they never gave up. They kept going. And then over time, it's almost impossible not to find success if you just use that formula. Take action, fail or succeed, learn from it, and repeat. I think anyone in any walk of life, no matter where you start from, if you follow that formula, take action, learn, repeat, you're going to get to wherever you want to go.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. That's awesome. I get the chills when we have these conversations. This is what I'm passionate about. So when you say learn 70 to 80% of it, these guys are like, you're never obviously going to know 100% of it. So let's talk about that 70 to 80%. Like, what is that 70 to 80%? So let me tell you what I think it is, and then and give me some feedback on that. I think something that I started implementing was one book. I read one book and I try to implement 1 to 2 things per chapter. To me, that's my gold nugget. Do that and take action. What would you say that 70 to 80%? Like, what's something actionable to let somebody know, like, hey, it's time to take action after I've educated myself?
Yeah. So, something actionable for me was kind of like what you said. You take one takeaway or two from every chapter you read. A great book that kind of goes along those same lines is The One Thing. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's called The
Gary
One
Keller?
Thing. What is it?
I believe Gary Keller wrote that one.
Gary Keller. Okay, yeah. So basically the premise of the book is you don't have to do everything. You want to find the one place where you have the most leverage. You want to figure out the one thing you can do that's going to have the most impact, and focus on that. And that again is one of the things that stuck with me when I do my to-do list. When I go through my emails, when I do all that stuff, I narrow it down to one thing and one thing only. Because if I have 3 things, 10 things, nothing gets done. So The One Thing, fantastic book. And the other thing it forces you to do is it forces you to learn how to work smarter, not harder. There's a lot of culturally, there's a lot of I guess people want to grind and are very proud of working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's necessary whenever you start something. But if you live your life that way, it's going to be a miserable life. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter what you accumulate. It doesn't matter how many people know you. If you grind away, you'll never be happy. I can guarantee that. While it's always necessary when starting something new, right? But you can't live your life that way. So The One Thing was a huge lesson to me. I think a lot of people I work with ask me, how do you run your business in such a short amount of time? And it's because I just do one thing at a time. And I focus wherever the leverage is, wherever I can do a little bit of work that gets massive effort. And I think a lot of people, when they start a business, like I said, you got to grind, but they never outgrow it. They just think, because that got me here, in order to get anywhere else, I'm going to have to do the same thing. And there's a saying a lot of people say, whatever got you here is not going to get you there, right? So I think it's grinding is always the first start of something new. But if you want to grow past that or make more progress, you got to have a mindset change from grinding to working smarter. And you see a lot of businesses that get to a certain point and then just plateau, but the people are still working their butts off. And I think that's the reason why, is not being able to make that mental change from time to stop grinding and time to start working harder. So again, going back to the actionable part, The One Thing by Gary Keller, a really good book.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wanna take what you just said and transition it into our next topic. Because you said the one thing, and so kind of boiling that down into a gold nugget is like, you're operating at a high level, but you still have you could put 100 things on your to-do list, but it's about prioritizing and knowing what one thing out of all those 100 is going to give you the most action. So really, to boil that down into a gold nugget is write everything out, but only focus on the one that's probably going to have the most results. The 80-20 principle, like, I'm going to focus on that 20% because it's going to give me 80% of my results. And so the reason I was saying I want to transition that into the next topic is that I want to talk about goal settings. For me, I like to set 1 year goal, like the 5-year goal, the 1 year goal, and my daily habits are based off of that 1 year goal. So I review my daily habits a lot. And so can you talk about, like, the one thing, like, do you review your annual goals, but then you base your one thing off of that annual goal?
Yeah, I mean, so it was very structured like that in the beginning, with an annual goal and breaking it down. And there were massive goals, and what do I have to do every day? But today it's kind of different. My goal is, my business is where I want it to be. I'm happy. So as far as growth and more income and revenue and all that kind of stuff, I just don't care about it. So my goal is have better health so I can be around for my family a long time, have a better relationship with my wife and better relationship with my children. I've got 6 kids. So my goals on a daily basis are all about, are my wife and I getting along? And then every night we watch a show or a movie together. And that's kind of like the us time. Did we get that done? We try to do that every single night. And did I spend one-on-one time with each kid? And, did I eat right and get into the gym? So it's really changed. When I started out, and most people listening to this podcast, it's probably very work related. But mine's kind of different, but it does still break down to a daily, and there still is a macro goal, but it's not like I want to be 80% of the best dad I could be in a year and then, reset it. It's kind of all come together where I don't care that much about work or business anymore because that box is checked. I'm happy as can be. And it was time to shift focus and priorities to just living a good, decent life. But again, you got to be intentional about it. If you're not intentional about it, it won't happen on its own. It's not going to magically happen.
Yeah, I love that. Really, really what you're saying is your why has changed. Early on, it was about work related. Now it's more about family and health. But regardless of where the focus is, you use the word intentional. So like the one thing, like the thing that you do daily is intentional. It's not a randomized thing where you wake up one morning and you say, okay, let's see what I can do. No, you probably plan that out where you say, this is the one thing I want to focus on. So for you, the one thing you want to focus on is family, and you probably plan that out. So it's regardless of where the focus is, that's a golden nugget, is like it's intentional. It's not just randomly made up.
Yeah. I mean, you'll never get to wherever you want to be if you don't have a destination. You're just going to wander around aimlessly. So yeah, you got to be extremely intentional about anything you do. You hear a lot of people who are into kind of hope stuff into existence, or you wish it into existence, or whatever you want to manifest it into happening. But you can want something, but you got to have a plan. Like no matter how much you want something, you got to have a plan. You got to be intentional about what you're doing every day. I could want to be in the best shape of my life, but if I don't have a plan for exactly what I'm going to eat and how I'm going to exercise, it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, Austin's doing something similar right now. He has his, what is it, Austin? 5 buckets?
I call it my bucket list. I've kind of, since we started this podcast, like Justin said earlier, so many people have expressed their enthusiasm with writing and how powerful that is. And I've kind of combined a couple of things that some of the people we've had on here are. I was going to save it for our 10th episode, because on our 10th episode, Justin and I are the only 2 people on, and we kind of reflect on all of the golden nuggets that we've gone through. But I can give a little spiel about it. Yeah. I call it my bucket list, and I say that because one of the people we had on here talked about the few buckets that he had in his life, like his family, his faith, his finances, his just the things that he has. And so I've put mine together, and I've got 5 buckets. I've got my faith, my family, my fiance. I've got my 9 to 5, and then my first the business I'm running right now. Mm-hmm. And so every morning I write down critical tasks and specific things that I have to make sure that are intentional and that are going to move the needle forward with all 5 of my buckets. So that and some of those things are like, for example, my faith. I try to do some guided meditations in the morning. For my fiance, I try to make sure I'm giving her a specific love, affection, and attention that will help her have a better day and us have a better relationship. And so it's things like that that I think are super intentional, and that would not just happen randomly. Eventually it will develop into a habit, and I'll probably always continue to do that. But I think it's so important not only to write them down, but to be intentional about what you want to do, and because you got to know how you want your life to be, and only you can control that. And so that's my small step that allows me to kind of control my life from start to finish.
I think that's awesome. Another little takeaway or nugget that escaped me for decades, because I obviously did things similar to that, was that those buckets can change. I used to think those buckets are those buckets. and they will never change and they can't change. And do I even have the right buckets? Because what if I'm 20 years from now and I don't want that anymore? But what I've realized, and we probably picked up a little bit during our conversation, is it's okay if those buckets change over time. Some seasons in your life, you need a certain bucket that's not going to serve you later in life. When I got started, I was really motivated by, what you see on social media and stuff. It's embarrassing to admit, but it's the truth. I wanted the Ferrari. I wanted the big house. I wanted all that stuff. It's embarrassing to admit, but that's what drove me. And at that point in my life, that gave me enough motivation to take action and do what I needed to do. So while I'm not proud that I had the wants that I wanted, that bucket served me and gave me enough motivation to get to a better place to where I could reevaluate my buckets, if you will. So I think a good takeaway is it's okay if those things change. They probably will.
Absolutely. I agree. And honestly, I don't think you should be embarrassed because, it's perfectly fine to want nice things if that's what, eventually, if that's what makes you happy, that's what makes you happy. But I do love the fact that, now you're at a point in your life where because you've had that much drive, you don't necessarily have to focus on the financial aspect of your life as much. And I think that's so cool because that's a goal of mine. I don't want to really have to worry about where my next dollar is going to come from at a certain point in my life. I think it's so great that you get to spend your day focusing on your family. I love that. That's one of my key drivers for me. And I think that's so cool. You're a perfect example of where I want to be in 5 to 10 years. So I love that.
Yeah. It's lots of people want those things and it's nothing to be embarrassed about. The reason why I use that word is I got all that stuff, right? I bought the supercar. I got the massive houses in the state. Like I did it. I got it. And I realized it didn't do anything for me. Like I thought there was going to be like, I got the trucks, the boat, the cars, everything, right? The nanny, you name it, we had it. And it just didn't do anything for me. It literally did. I had a Ferrari in my garage for a year. I didn't even drive. It was awesome the 5 minutes when I bought it and drove it home. And then I was like, I don't like it anymore. So when I say embarrassing, it was because I had this huge wake up call, and it was embarrassing to me because I said, oh my gosh, I worked the last 5 years of my life for this stuff that I don't even care about. I said, this was my driving force and I got it. And I realized there's nothing in it for me. Like it's not special. It's not fulfilling in any way. So I was embarrassed when I hit that point that I wasn't, I guess, smarter or wiser or able to take a step back and realize what's most important in life. So for me, it was embarrassing, but that's why I went back and said a few moments earlier, now that when I look at it, I said, that was the right bucket for the right time. It got me to where I can see things a little bit differently. So, but it was an embarrassing moment. If you work your whole life for something and then you get it and you realize it didn't bring any of the fulfillment you wanted, it's a little tough of a pill to swallow.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'm very passionate about knowing my why. Why am I chasing financial freedom? And so the reason I'm so passionate about that is because I feel like your why determines your ceiling on how high you can go. And so I think wanting a Ferrari, like Austin said, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, shoot, me and Austin joke about getting one day, but that's not my why. I think if my why was a Ferrari, my ceiling would be right here. But my true why is I want to be a father, a husband. I want financial freedom. I want to be able to pay for a whole football team to go on a mission trip without them having it like that. That all of a sudden raises the roof to where it just kind of raises the roof to where I guess my limits, like I can achieve a whole lot more when my why is a little bit more internal like that, when it's not that surface level why. And so that's kind of my gold nugget is like if you want financial freedom, like don't stop at that. Like ask yourself why several more times. Like, why do you want financial freedom? And for you, John, you'd mentioned, you're realizing like you get to spend more time focusing on your family. And so what I'm seeing is like, that's to the core of it. You wanted that financial freedom. The Ferrari was kind of in front of you and that was motivating you. But when you dig past that Ferrari, you truly want it to be a family man. And I see that in you. It just kind of, I think what you're saying is it took you to get that Ferrari, to realize like, wait, that's not my true why. My true why is I want it to be a family man. And that's kind of driving you a little bit longer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're a better man than I'm going to admit it. You already know that right now. I didn't know. I thought stuff made you happy. And, I didn't come from any money. So I was always in the environment where I wanted more from, kids would come over from school and I was extremely embarrassed about where I lived and the condition of the house and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of stuck with me. I always had this chip on my shoulder where I wanted to show people that wasn't who I was and I was capable of more. So, that was kind of the why behind the why. Like the Ferrari was, hey, I can do this. This isn't me. There's nothing I need to be embarrassed about. That was just my situation at the time. So, if I dig into it, then yeah, there's a bigger why, but I'll tell you, I got lost in it for probably 10 years chasing stuff, and again, not proud of it. I wish I had great answers and could just say, I knew what I wanted from the beginning. I stuck with it. I never made any mistakes.
I don't think anybody can say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, dude, this is awesome. This is what I want at the podcast. Like, this is very authentic and genuine. And so if there's somebody out there listening and you are chasing the material things, I challenge you to go ask yourself, why are you chasing those material things? And really get to the core of it a little bit sooner than later. So this is some good stuff, John. I get excited. If I didn't watch the clock, I could easily stay on here for 4 hours, and I don't think there's anybody that's going to listen to a 4-hour podcast. But
yeah, absolutely.
John, are there any like prime gold nuggets that you want, like if somebody was listening that they went home and implemented this one gold nugget, like just, it's kind of a broad question, but is there any like gold nuggets that someone needs to go home and implement right now?
Yeah. So probably the most influential book I ever had to listen to. I haven't read a book since like grade school, but the most influential book I think for me personally was the book Screw It, Let's Do It by Richard Branson. And I was reading that book when I made a lot of the big changes in my life and started the business. And it was always passages from that book that I fell back on that gave me the courage to take action. And it's basically Richard Branson's story. Had some massive challenges in front of him and did some really big, cool things, but they were always extremely risky, where everything was on the line. And he'd always get to this point, where it's kind of chaos. And he'd go, you know what? Screw it. Let's do it. And he'd just go for it. So it's a simple book to read. His story is absolutely amazing. I mean, some of the stuff he's done, people don't know about. This is crazy amazing. But just always kind of getting to that point, kind of like that 70-80% we talked about, where he just kind of, just like that general, he just kind of hit that point. He goes, you know what? Screw it. Let's just do it. And he'd go for it. So that was the most influential book that I've ever read.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I've had that same attitude sometimes. When I got into my first flip house, I was trying to get all these checklists together, and I remember just tearing it up, and I literally said, screw it. I was like, let's just get in. And I ended up profiting more than I ever thought I'd profit. And so like looking back on it, I was like, I've tried to implement that attitude where it's like, screw it. So I didn't even know there was a book called that. So it's just kind of makes me feel better about that. Cause I would look.
He wasn't even at 70 or 80. He was at like 35%. He was like, let's just go in and do it.
Sometimes you got to go at 30%.
No, I always tell everybody I flipped that house twice. I think I laid all the floor and I ended up pulling it back up to relay it because I laid it incorrectly. And then the paint, I used the wrong type of paint where it just, I don't know. I flipped the house twice because I made so many mistakes. But looking back on it, I made more money ever that I thought was. I made a year's salary that I was like, whoa, this is awesome. And then I look at all the mistakes I made, and it kind of opened my eyes. I was like, wait, those mistakes, I still saw success, even those mistakes was what was kind of scaring me originally. And so it was just that's just kind of my little gold nugget. Like, screw it, just do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think another kind of takeaway from that is, if you've got a good why, a big why, don't even go 70-80%. Just go. I mean, I remember when I started my sales training business, I didn't have a single client. I didn't have a plan, and I didn't even have a sales training curriculum. I went out and I got my first customer, I cold called and I started looking for companies that needed salespeople. And I figured if they were hiring salespeople, they had some type of sales issue. And I remember I met with one company locally here, and no training program whatsoever. And we talked and they said, "What's your rate?" And I didn't know what my rate was because I didn't even have any customers. I didn't even have a program. So I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to have to go big if they're going to believe in me. So I said $10,000 a month, and they said, "Well, we'll give you 6." And I go, "Really?" But from that point on, I had my first client, and I was forced then to take the actions I needed to take to develop our program week by week as we went. So I think a good takeaway is sometimes you just got to make the decision, because once you do, the follow through is going to force you to take all those steps. And let me look at it another way. A lot of people, when they're starting a business, think, I got to get the logo, the website, the LLC, this, and they never get out of that preparing mode, right? But if you just go out and start and you go, crap, I got my first client, it's going to force you to do all those things you got to do, right? You got to go get your bank account now. You got to go do this and that. So I think if you've got a big why, you sometimes just need to make the decision and go for it, because the results are going to force you to build whatever you're building, right? So kind of like the decision. I've built a few businesses now in different programs and things like that. And my huge takeaway was never build the program first, never build the business first. Get some clients, because once I have clients, I go, oh my gosh, I've got to deliver. And that would force me to deliver. And I tried it the opposite way, building first, and I'd build stuff that nobody wanted. So I'd spend months and months building something, and then I'd try to sell it and nobody wanted it. And I just wasted all that time. So a big takeaway for me that I live with now day to day is when I have an idea, I jump on it right away. I sell it first. I get a client, I do something, and that forces me to do what I need to do.
Mm-hmm. Really, the gold nugget there is if you're going to say screw it, you better know your why first.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Austin, what you got? Any final questions before we wrap things up?
Man, I really appreciate like everything that you've said today. Honestly, a lot of it resonated with like what I'm doing in my business. Like right now, I started my business, I don't know, maybe January or February of this year. And I did exactly what you said. I pretty much just started off like doing the LLC and then the logo, and I did the website, and I was like, man, this really isn't helping at all.
What matters?
And and I heard someone say recently, he says, if you're just starting out and just, developing a business, one of the first things you really need to do is develop your streams of revenue. Like that's going to be the first thing that keeps your business afloat. And so while all those other things are important at some point, it's definitely not what's going to fuel your business. And so that what you just said, spoke volumes to me. And honestly, I really appreciate everything that you've said so far. This has been probably one of my favorite episodes that we've done up to this point. But John, can you want to tell, anybody who's listening on the podcast where they can, learn a little bit more about you or what you got going on in your life?
Yeah, our main website is called MidwestRev.com. Just from the story I told you, when I got on GoDaddy and I found a domain when I started my business, still there. So MidwestRev.com, links to the different things we do and lots of free training for those in real estate and stuff like that.
Awesome. Heck yeah.